o'clock. This is Zebzones. Good evening. The Tories' efforts to get their election campaign back on track have been derailed with the resignation of a cabinet minister. Alan Cairns is standing down in a row about a former aide who was blamed for sabotaging a rape trial. Moments after the resignation, the Prime Minister went on the offensive against Jeremy Corbyn, accusing him of pushing for a referendum on EU membership and another on Scottish independence. The Green Party has launched its campaign, promising to spend hundreds of billions of pounds to rid the UK of fossil fuels. The pressure on Donald Trump over impeachment is being ramped up, with Congress announcing that new hearings are to be held in public for the first time. Scotland Yard could face hundreds of claims for compensation from Extinction Rebellion activists after the group won a victory in the courts. A businessman from Northern Ireland who was abducted and tortured by a gang has spoken for the first time, telling the BBC how he thought he was going to die. Boris Johnson had planned to officially start the Conservatives' election campaign with a speech outside Downing Street this lunchtime. But instead, the party's plans ended up in disarray. Shortly before he spoke, the Welsh Secretary Alan Cairns resigned following allegations that he knew about a former aide's role in sabotaging a rape trial. The Tories have also faced further questions about Jacob Rees-Mogg's comments about the Grenfell Tower fire and a campaign video that critics claimed was doctored. Mr Johnson ignored such problems and instead struck an optimistic tone, saying he wanted to get Brexit done and then make 2020 the year of investment and growth. Our first report tonight is from our assistant political editor, Norman Smith.
Boris Johnson is tonight battling to get his ragged election campaign back on track after a chaotic and chastening 24 hours that culminated in the resignation of a cabinet minister. Just moments before the Prime Minister was to make his keynote podium speech in front of Downing Street, it was announced that the Welsh Secretary Alan Cairns was resigning over allegations he lied about an aide who deliberately sabotaged a rape trial. This followed the fury over Cabinet Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg's remarks about Grenfell, the comparison of Jeremy Corbyn to Joseph Stalin, and uproar over a misleading Tory party video. Mr Johnson chose to ignore such setbacks and instead chose to try and shift the focus onto his core election message, Brexit. Under Jeremy Corbyn, he warned, there would be years of more delay with two further referendums, one on the EU, the other on Scottish independence. Only the Conservative Party, he said, would get Brexit done. That, he predicted, would pave the way towards a future in which Britain could realise its true potential.
If we can get this deal over the line, then we can release that pent-up flood of investment. Hundreds of billions are waiting to pour into the UK, and we can inject a surge of confidence into our system. The biggest programme of NHS investment for a generation, lifting up funding of schools across the country, 20,000 more police on the streets, an infrastructure revolution.
His effort to strike a more optimistic note came after a torrid morning for the Conservative Party chairman, James Cleverly, who on the breakfast television sofas was hounded over his party's start to this campaign. Mr Cleverly acknowledged Jacob Rees-Mogg's remarks had been foolish and insensitive, but was less apologetic over a deliberately misleading Tory party video that sought to portray Labour's Brexit Secretary, Sir Keir Starmer, as seemingly unable to answer any questions.
It is completely obvious that it is a light-hearted, humorous, shorter form video.
OK, but it was doctored, wasn't it?
It was edited. Obviously edited.
OK, so we're disagreeing on the language that I'm using. Is that what we're doing? Edited, to make it look like Keir Starmer couldn't answer.
It matters. It matters.
The thing is, from your point of view as well, because, the election is just about to start, and this is what you're having to talk about.
Well, the point that we will be making through this election...
Despite Mr Cleverly's discomfort, senior Tories hope such setbacks will blow over and calculate that Alan Cairns is little known outside of Westminster and Wales. Within hours of his departure, senior cabinet ministers were already sounding relatively sanguine about his resignation. The International Trade Secretary Liz Truss.
Well, this is a very serious issue, what's happened in Wales with this very serious case. And I think it's right that Alan Cairns has decided to resign so that he can collaborate fully with the case that's being put forward. I think that's very important.
If anyone in Tory HQ thought the commanding poll lead enjoyed by Boris Johnson pointed to a comfortable victory over Jeremy Corbyn, then today will have shattered such illusions. In a 5-week campaign, there's plenty of scope for things to go wrong. And today is only day one for Boris Johnson.
Alan Cairns has said he's confident he'll be cleared by a Cabinet Office inquiry and he's planning to stand for re-election in the Vale of Glamorgan. But the former Welsh Secretary Stephen Crabb said the case was very damaging for the Conservatives' campaign in Wales and would make it difficult for candidates contesting tight seats. Here's our Wales political editor, Felicity Evans.
Alan Cairns' resignation leaves the Conservatives' Welsh election campaign in disarray. As Welsh Secretary, he was supposed to be leading it. There's no obvious candidate to take over that role. Mr Cairns denies any wrongdoing and insists the inquiry will clear his name. But his resignation is undoubtedly damaging not just to his own electoral prospects but potentially to the party. The former Welsh Secretary Stephen Crabb says there's concern among Conservative election candidates around Wales at the way senior figures have handled this row.
It's very damaging because it's cast a shadow, quite a heavy shadow, over the start of this campaign in Wales. I think the party in Wales, I think it's problematic that we don't have a woman in a senior position in Wales. We've never had a female Welsh Conservative member of Parliament. And I think that just reflects poorly on us in 2019.
The party had hoped to challenge strongly for Leave voting seats in North East Wales in particular. We have no way to tell how the party's decision to select a candidate for the Welsh Assembly elections in 2021, accused by a judge of sabotaging a rape trial, will affect that. But the victim in that trial has spoken of her distress at the failure of any senior party figure in Wales to apologise. To add to their problems, questions about who knew what and when don't end with Mr Cairns' resignation.
Jeremy Corbyn has said he would provide a very different style of leadership for the country.